Hello, and welcome to I Hate Talking, a podcast about talking, including etymology, frustrating topics, current events, and other random subjects. I'm Adam.
And I'm Steph. We are married, and we invite you into these discussions with us as we talk about the good and the bad of talking.
We hope you enjoy today's episode. Welcome to episode 15 of I Hate Talking.
Hi, everyone.
And today we are going to be talking about a word or phrase of the episode that in some way does relate to our topic of the episode, and that is going to be the word dysmorphia.
Ooh, I like that.
So what comes to your mind when you hear the word dysmorphia?
Well, dys would be like not or anti, right? And morphia, I don't know. I feel like it would definitely be something mental or not appropriate, not socially acceptable thought process is what I would think of.
Indeed. So you're on the right track. It does come from the Greek, which comes from the word dus or dis, which means the opposite or to have the negative connotation of a particular word. And the root Greek word is morphe, which means form, so having a certain shape. So when this is used in the Greek as one single word, dysmorphia, it can mean misshapenness or ugliness. So the word dysmorphia is typically used with the word body, as in the phrase body dysmorphia. So have you heard of that phrase before?
Right, yes. That would be when you look in the mirror and think that you look different than you do. Or I think that's probably the most common I'm familiar with, right? Somebody who maybe struggles with disordered eating might think that they're larger than they are, which would be dysmorphia.
Exactly. So the phrase used in psychology and the mental health arena does mean that there is a perceived physical flaw that is either not true or is not readily apparent to others. But when you get down to the actual use of the word dysmorphia, it actually does mean that something is wrong. So it is interesting to note that there is perhaps a overuse of the word when you're talking about body dysmorphia, that it is only a perceived or unapparent flaw, but that the actual word dysmorphia means that there is something misshapen.
Well, that's not good.
So there's a similar term that has been coined recently that is called money dysmorphia.
Well, no. I don't usually know what we're talking about, but I feel like I'm catching on to what we're going to talk about today. Is this, if you have money dysmorphia, would that mean that you think you have more or less money than you really have in your bank?
So the term that has been come to be coined is when people have a skewed perception of their finances. So again, this is more in the vein of having a perception about reality, not necessarily reality itself, though I will say that in some ways perception is based on reality. But money dysmorphia, as it is defined, is when someone feels stressed or insecure about their finances, regardless of any real issues.
I feel that.
And that is what probably many people and many of our listeners are feeling in this economic environment with the inflation that we are dealing with and the cost of goods rising and the lack of purchasing power that the dollar has. And that is, for all intents and purposes, the definition of inflation. Goods are rising and you have less purchasing power for those goods. So because you feel that, and I feel that, and I think many of our listeners feel that, I would say that this money dysmorphia is not exclusively a perceived issue, but is in some shape or form related to a real issue.
So you're proposing that how the actual term body dysmorphia is actually in its true form saying that there is something wrong with that body. You're saying that money dysmorphia, we also truly actually have money problems as well.
I think so. I think that perhaps when someone has body dysmorphia or money dysmorphia, that they are, again, overstating that flaw in their own mind versus perhaps what is true or what others perceive. But nonetheless, there still is some root issue in play.
Having a hard time combining those two, because I feel like somebody who may look in the mirror has generations of expectations put on them and social expectations. I'm trying to reconcile, I guess, what you're saying, because I definitely sympathize with people with body dysmorphia and possibly people who have money dysmorphia, I guess, would have the same issues possibly, right? Like they grew up in a poor economic situation, so they feel like there's never enough because maybe when they were a child, there's never enough.
So that is something critical that I think that you are hitting on, is that when you are considering how you feel about your body or your financial status, that once again, this perception as you're looking in the mirror is that you are not only comparing your expectations of what you see with what you expect, but also with what others expect.
Right. I think that's a big part of your looks and also with money, right? Is how you're supposed to dress or what you're supposed to eat. And if I want to feed my kids and family healthy, I have to buy organic and I have to buy all these things that are not cheap. And sometimes I have to look at my budget and be like, well, what's more important here?
Exactly. So when we consider some of the statistics around money dysmorphia, there was a Credit Karma survey that surveyed a number of young people with regards to their finances. And based on the definition that we've given, there were 43% of Gen Z respondents and 41% of millennials that said they have money dysmorphia. And these people that have this money dysmorphia say they feel, quote unquote, behind, even though they may be financially stable or even have a decent amount of savings.
Is that similar to when we were newlyweds? I remember having to remind myself often, especially around the holidays. I love decorating. I love decorating for all holidays, especially for Christmas. And people were very generous in giving us their hand-me-down decorations that I appreciated and later gave up to other, passed down to other people. But there was a phrase I heard during that time where it said, don't judge your beginning by somebody else's middle. And when I grew up, obviously my parents had decades of Christmas ornaments. And so when we started out, we just had a couple and then a bunch of Dollar Tree items. So just remembering that I'm looking at these people nowadays, you look at people on Instagram or anything like that. And it's hard not to assume that you're behind compared to them.
Exactly. And I think that's always been the case to some degree, right? There are those that are looking for the American dream with the green grass and the white picket fence and a home and a vehicle, and they are keeping up with the Joneses, as it were, to use that turn of phrase. And that goes back many decades into the 1900s. But to your point, I think that it has been exacerbated by social media, where these two particular generations that we have been talking about have been constantly exposed to social media and seeing not only what their peers are doing, but also these social influencers and those with great wealth or perhaps apparent great wealth, where they are just receiving these things for free and don't actually have extended access to these experiences and flaunting of wealth that they are showing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of it, sometimes influencers get things for free because people want them to use their products for advertisement. Also, I saw a documentary where people would rent things because they found value in the fact if you just rented something for the video and then returned it or whatnot, it made you look higher class and also made people follow you more.
Exactly. So I think that has always existed in some form or fashion, not only with body comparison, but also financial and wealth comparison. But that in this day and age with technology and the constant social media pressure, that is much more of a problem and something that we have to be aware of when we are considering how we are doing financially as well as physically.
Okay, can I share a story that happened maybe 4 hours ago? I was with my kids at their martial arts thing, and one of the moms complimented my shirt and asked where she can get it. So I kind of laughed it off, like, oh, this whole thing. And then I told her I just got it at the Goodwill, and she was shocked. And it was like this funny joke, but it was in a greater way. It's interesting because I literally did buy it at the Goodwill. And just put it on, and so I was trying to tell her, like, yeah, it makes me feel put together because it's a nice shirt and it makes me look like I tried. Where she saw me and assumed that I was really dressing up and trying, and in reality, it was just a piece that I found and put on. So our perceptions, our reality of what my day was. She didn't know that I literally spent the entire day scrubbing our floors and our baseboards. She saw that I had this fancy shirt on and thought that, I don't know, I had a luxury day, which I didn't.
Indeed. So, and I think that is something to be aware of. So, at the sake of potentially miscomparing ourselves to how others are doing financially, there are some interesting statistics that I'll share that are related to how we may feel we are doing financially and whether we have this money dysmorphia or not. So based on some statistics in some reports that I've read, there are a number of things that we can consider when we are looking at how we are doing. And again, this is all in danger of being accurate or not, because you can only do so much when you're comparing yourselves to others, because you must be relevant in terms of how you're actually doing. But there are only 15% of American households that make over $100,000.
Today in America.
According to this report, that is correct. So that means the other 85% are making less than that and are dealing with these inflationary pressures that I think we are all feeling. But again, with regards to the middle class being pushed out, as well as just the minimum wage that people have to deal with, that there are a very large percentage of people that are making less than that threshold.
So this might be more deep than your studies, but is that accounting for, like, obviously I feel like New York, LA, all those places are going to be much more higher cost of living.
Yep, this is a general statistic for all of America, and it's at the household level, so not at the wage income earner level either. So this could be a dual income household.
So two parents working, making 50 each, and having 7 kids. Could be the same as one person working alone in an apartment making 100.
That is correct. So obviously some generalities that we're dealing with here, but the key point being where that breakdown occurs at that 100K mark, and that only being 15% of American households, which again could consist of dual earners within that household.
So what do you propose we do then? Because when we were newlyweds, we both worked. You actually traveled quite a bit for a living. So I obviously stayed home, packed my lunch and took it and ate at home. But we didn't have 2 people to feed all week because you were gone. So our grocery budget, at the time we were very precise on our budgets. And our budget was extremely low because I was only basically feeding 1.5 people a week. We have way more people in our house. You don't travel like you used to. And I don't work anymore. So our budget for groceries is exponentially larger than it was 15 years ago. So I know those variables change. We have more people now, less income, less, at least I do not work. Obviously, you've improved in your career, but you don't have my income anymore. What do people do? And what do you propose people do? Because as families grow, our kids, I didn't cook enough dinner tonight. Now we had other food. They ate. Don't panic, everyone. But I cooked burgers and I did not defrost enough hamburger for everyone because one of our kids ate 4 hamburgers. So as the families are growing, budgets are growing, or like groceries are costing more money. How do you propose we deal with this problem?
Well, we'll get there, and that is something that we'll touch on in regards to inflation and how that is measured. But before we do, let's look at some other statistics that I think may give some additional insights as we talk about some of those things that we can do and some of those things that we're dealing with. So another statistic, again, for the American household, the average credit card balance is $6,295.
Wow. That's a lot.
And based on that, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck.
That's stressful. Because if anything happens, what if your tire, my tire needs to be changed. I keep putting it off. It's not urgent, but it has a slow leak. Anything like that is going to put you upside down.
Indeed, especially if you're already in debt in the credit card and maintaining your purchasing power for things that you need on a week-to-week basis with no cushion. And with all those things considered, the average age of the first-time homebuyer is 35.
What was it 20 years ago?
So 20 years ago, from 2024, that would be 2004, it was 32 years old. So not that much off, but
okay.
3 years can be a significant amount of time that you're waiting and paying rent or living with relatives while you're waiting to accumulate that wealth. And according to the statistics that I'm looking at, back in the 80s and 90s, it was at the 29 or even 28-year-old that was able to purchase their first time house. And over the last 2 years, we've reached a peak at 36 and 35.
Okay. And this is a common theme, right? I remember my parents, when I was a child, commenting that their minivan cost as much as my grandmother's house cost. Now, she had bought it, 40 plus years earlier. But that was frustrating to them that they were like, my minivan costs more. And now I feel that as we're buying stuff. Like, I was looking at housing prices locally and man, we should sell our house. And because that looks nice in our bank account.
Indeed, but again, that relates back to inflation and the decreased purchasing power of the dollar, because those houses or that minivan were not being measured in equitable dollars. That was inflated dollars that you were comparing those purchasing prices in.
Right, because again, another scenario is the same place. I grew up getting ice cream. My parents got ice cream when they were newlyweds. And I think back when we were kids, it was $1 an ice cream cone. And my dad's like, I remember when it was 10 cents. So my parents would reminisce about how they would spend 10 cents an ice cream cone. Or I think it cost us about $1 in ice cream at that time. But our salaries, I'm trying to reconcile this because their salary also 30 years earlier was way less than it was then. I think the problem I have currently is our salaries are not significantly more, but groceries are significantly more than they were a couple years ago.
Indeed, and there's a graph of the purchasing power of the dollar that will take into account real wages versus the cost of goods, and I'll look that up and try to put that in the show notes that shows that graph of how the purchasing power of the dollar has decreased significantly over the past century, and more so and more rapidly in these past few years. There's some statistics that I was reading that based on 18 months ago, so just a year and a half ago, that for a family of 4, which we're a family of 6, that for this particular family of 4, that it costs $11,000 more a year to buy the same amount of groceries and basic needs today than that time 18 months ago.
That's hard.
And there's a variety of different inflation statistics that you can look at. There is the quote unquote official inflation rate, which I think has been, anywhere from 3 to 5, upwards of 6%. There's some statistics that I was reading earlier today that show on an annual basis it's about 8% versus an average wage increase of typically 3%. So again, real wages are nowhere near what the cost of goods are being paced at. And there's even some statistics out there based on, again, what particular goods you are buying, that the inflation rate could be as high as 35%.
So how long will this happen? Like, I don't understand why it's happening or who's benefiting from this. I feel like everyone I at least know is hurting.
So perhaps a deeper dive into inflation and central banks and the monetary policy of the United States will be the subject of a future episode. But I think we are getting perhaps a little bit long-winded for including that in this particular episode. So let's return to the question that was asked previously. What can one do about their budget and these financial realities, as well as potentially the perception of money dysmorphia?
I'm all ears.
So there is a particular quote that I will read here from Scotty Hobbs, who is, I guess, a social media influencer / bodybuilder who offers financial advice on the side.
He does it all.
He does it all. But nonetheless, he posted this question: what does it take to blow $10,000 in 1 year? Just $27.40 a day in miscellaneous spending. He says, it's not just the big purchases that keep you broke. It's the small ones that you think won't make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, because you think, when I first heard that, I'm like, $27, that's way too much money a day. But it's like, oh, this item, it's just $4. Oh, this one, the coffee, it was $3. And it really adds up. You only have to buy 5 of those items. And then you're at that limit.
Yep, and it is somewhat of a joke, I think, in the financial world, right? That you can, for just a price of a cup of coffee a day, or for if you stop eating avocado toast, that you'll be able to buy a house. And I think that is a true reflection of the fact that real wages are not keeping up with the cost of goods, but that nonetheless, that there is the opportunity to reduce frivolous spending in order to deal with this economic environment that we are in. The article and some of the statistics that we pulled for the money dysmorphia conversation also have some suggestions on how to cope. They say that you should consult with a financial advisor, which is an interesting suggestion, that you would need to spend more money in order to save money. But nonetheless, there are a variety of options that you can learn about finances. And I think that's the key aspect, is that you need to learn how money works and learn how to budget, as well as learn some of the things that impact the economic and financial world that perhaps we will talk about in a future episode. And putting together a monthly budget is a critical thing that goes along with that. And there's a variety of different ways that you can do that with budgetary tools, as well as different styles of budgeting that are out there from different financial gurus and different financial systems.
Right. Well, I heard that a couple states are at least proposing, if not have already sanctioned, that high school students can't graduate until they have a budget and finance course. I think that's amazing because the shocking amount of high schoolers that graduate and don't know how to do any kind of finances is scary and puts them on a really hard trajectory.
Exactly. And one of the oft asked questions, what is your greatest asset?
If we were broke, if you were no longer here and I had to take care of the kids and I guess I'd sell the house. My house would be my greatest asset.
Indeed, and that is the answer of most people.
Woohoo. Oh.
But
no.
what I would consider the true answer.
What, you or the answer? Because
well, we are all on the road to understanding through these conversations.
Okay.
So I'm sharing my opinion is that your house is a significant asset, but that your own intrinsic ability and your worth in terms of the job marketplace is your greatest asset. So if you need to increase your worth, that you invest in yourself in terms of being able to gain new skills or continue within your particular career path so that you have greater worth and greater income to deal with these increasing costs of the day.
Okay, that's sweet. And it's true. Because I could get a job, even if it was just at the local place right next door, or more with my career path. So that's a sweet thought, saying your intrinsic abilities. But in my head, I'm like, sell the house, sell the cars, but we need those to get the jobs. Sell certain high-end items we may have. Obviously not for as much as we paid for them, but it would be money, cash flow.
Exactly. And that's the cash flow aspect that is central to the question here, is that if you stopped receiving income, how long could you sustain your current lifestyle? There are very few ways that you could increase your income without investments of time or funds. And unless we're receiving passive income to cover recurring expenses, we are in debt and dependent on our time, health, and energy for income. And this is quoted, just those last two sentences there, from a Redditor, XXXBuzz, who I think has a very insightful take on that, is that it's our time, health, and energy that are critical for our income. And if we don't protect those things, that when that ends, we won't be able to continue generating income and dealing with these increasing costs.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So one final thing that I think we can consider in terms of this financial discussion that we've been having is, again, looking at how we compare ourselves to others. So not only should we understand how money works and understand how financial systems impact our ability to earn an income or deal with rising costs, that perhaps one of the most concrete things that we can do immediately is stop scrolling social media, where you're more likely to, again, not only compare yourselves to others and what they have in terms of their material assets, but also that we are being confronted within those social media applications many, many ads that could cause impulsive purchasing.
Yeah, and it's amazing. This is probably another topic for another day, but how those ads are generated by what you're talking about or seeing. I was talking to someone about a certain kind of yoga. She was telling me about it. And now I did not Google it or anything. It was just in our text app. And now I'm getting a ton. Every time I'm on Facebook, I'm getting ads for this yoga. And maybe it's a coincidence, but I'm pretty sure that whatever apps we're using saw that she talked about it. And now they want me to pay $5 a month to use these apps.
There you have it. Everything is listening to everything that we say.
I almost signed up today, by the way.
Well, I'm glad you restrained yourself. So, from your friends at I Hate Talking, until next time, remember, it is only through talking that we begin the journey to understanding.